Welcome everybody to this talk organized jointly by the International Society for Gesture Studies, Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, the Department of English and Communication. So this is probably going to be our last talk just before the summer. So if I forget to tell you later, have a wonderful summer, everyone. And we're very lucky today to have an unusual speaker with us. We have, for those of you who know ISGS, we have been promising to have talks by students and postgraduates for quite a long time now. And finally, we have secured someone who is currently an invited student with us at the Department of English and Communication, but she's also a research assistant in the Center for Language Evolution Studies at the University of Nicolaus Copernicus in Poland. So I welcome Klaudia Karkowska. She's actually going to introduce herself a little bit more, and so I'm not going to say much. But before we do that, just a couple of things. We are going to be recording this session, so if anyone is not comfortable with that, bear it in mind. Hopefully we will be able to share it later, depending on if everything goes well. So please keep your mics on mute throughout. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And at the end, we will have about 10 minutes question and answer. So Claudia is going to be talking for about 45 minutes or so, and then we will do the question and answer. Couple of quick announcements whilst you're all here. We have also put online the video recording for our previous speaker, Jennifer Gerwin. I believe I have not yet sent an email to the ISGS members telling you of this, but if you go online, you will find it there on the webpage. It is also accessible through the Department of English and Communication. And the other thing is that we also have a call for papers at the moment, which we have sent through the ISGS email. So if you're interested in that, have a look. If you have not received it but might be interested, it's going to be a multimodality in non-lab contexts. So if you're interested in joining that, it will be published in Frontiers, either Frontiers in Communication, Frontiers in Education, or Frontiers in psychology, sorry, depending on the content. So let me know if you're interested in that. You can even say something in the chat now if you're interested. Okay, so I'll stop now, and let me then welcome Klaudia Karkowska. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm very happy to be there, first of all. Good afternoon from Hong Kong, and as I can see some familiar names from Europe, good morning to you. My talk will be focused on bilinguals and nonverbal communication, specifically issues of language dominance and movement classification. I'm a member of Center for Language Evolution Studies of Nicolaus Copernicus University in Poland, in Toruń, since 2021. So my primary research interest lies in understanding gestures, adapters, specifically used in the context by bilinguals. I also work as a research assistant in several projects, mainly focusing on narrative, storytelling, pantomime, and metaphor. Previously, I was able to conduct my own independent research, which focused on language dominance in Polish, English, bilinguals, specifically preschoolers, which was supervised by Professor Müller. The projects that I'm going to present you are founded by Excellence Initiative Research University program that we have at NCU within the competition Smart Free and Grants for NCU students, and also co-funded by Center of Excellence. So first of all, I will focus on language dominance and its definition, how it differs from language proficiency and language fluency. Then I will discuss issues concerning assessing language dominance throughout the studies. We will also take a look on how language dominance is assessed within adults and how to assess it within children. So first of all, language dominance, language proficiency, and language fluency are three completely different things. However, they seem to be used interchangeably throughout the research. Language dominance is a broad concept. However, proficiency would be only a part of language dominance. Similarly, would work language fluency, as fluency is only part of proficiency, as fluency concerns one of the skills, which is speech. So over the years, we could observe that researchers actually tend to define dominance through proficiency, which is not the same thing. It's quite simple to do because you can measure one of the skills that are in proficiency, which would be writing, speaking, listening, or reading. However, the language dominance is also influenced by vocabulary size, syntactic knowledge, which is part of proficiency, but also the frequency of use. That is a completely different aspect, and is actually an aspect of dominance, not of the proficiency. And it's especially hard when we have simultaneous bilinguals. So bilinguals who acquired both of the languages in the same time. And those are especially early bilinguals. So bilinguals who acquired the languages before the end of the critical period. And those bilinguals, the dominance tends to shift based on the amount of the output and input, so the exposure that they have and the use of the language. Here I have a fragment on one research papers concerning language dominance and gesture use in bilingual children. And as you can see here, the language dominance is measured within proficiency. So we have variety of words types used in speech working as another measure of proficiency. And then this measure of proficiency is used to establish language dominance. However, it's quite problematic because as we can see in the case of the construct of language dominance proposed by Montreal, we actually see that proficiency is just a small part of it. We have more than one factor influencing proficiency. The previously mentioned input and output, or biographical variables, which would be the age of acquisition, place of birth, place of residence, and the languages of the environment. And we have to see language dominance as something unstable. It's a construct, and due to the factors influencing it over the lifetime, the dominance can shift. We have the dominant and dominant and balanced bilinguals. So as it shifts throughout the life, and we also observe lots of factors influencing this construct, what we propose is to develop this construct even more. So we propose to also include personal variables as a factor influencing language dominance. The emotional and social connection, motivation and interest in language, language attitudes, comfort and familiarity with language. And as we take a look at self-assessment questionnaires for language proficiency, it's something that is actually tested when bilinguals are asked about their proficiency, biographical variables, but they are also asked for the preferences. One of the most popular questionnaires used for self-assessment in adults would be language experience and proficiency questionnaire. This questionnaire was translated to many different languages, and as you may see, those are the questions from the questionnaire. In the question 4 and 5, participants are actually asked about the preference. And the preference is important for the later results of the assessment. However, the problem is more complex when it comes to children, as it's quite hard to ask them, what's your preference? Which language would you choose when you had to read something or speak with your friend if your friend would also be bilingual? So it's much harder to assess dominance in children. One of the ways is to use psycholinguistic tools. And one of such tools would be Child HALA. This is a test based on Hawaii assessment of language axis. And the psycholinguistic tool, the regular HALA, was created to observe shifts within the language dominance. And then in 2017, it was adjusted by Bożena Dubiel, and she proposed the version for children. So the version for children was tested on a group of Polish-English bilinguals who live in Ireland, and they were observed as they went to school as their language dominance shifted from Polish to English. The game is quite simple, and from my experience, children are quite happy to take part in the game. There is a trial round. After the trial round, we have 2 rounds for each of the languages. So in that case, would be a round for Polish and English. Starting from the beginning, we have a picture of the boy, then the picture goes into black and white, and the body parts are highlighted in red, and as the body part is highlighted, the sound is emitted, and children are meant to name the body part as fast as they can. They think it's fun as I ask them, and what the test measures is the reaction time in naming. It doesn't measure the correctness, as in that case child can answer instead of belly button, but the correctness is something that changes over the years. The child is older, so they are more correct. However, the only thing influencing language dominance here measured would be the reaction time. So that would be one of the psycholinguistic tools, but still it doesn't cover that much as the self-assessment questionnaires do. So what we propose is to actually use different options, to use multiple tools, multiple ways to measure language dominance. First of all, we can do structured interviews, and those interviews can be based on the self-assessment questionnaires for adults when parents speak for children and they tell us about their child preferences. Apart from that, we can do observations, which can be either home, school, or when they interact with the peers during the playtime. Also, previously mentioned language proficiency tests, they can be run based on the transcriptions. One of the quite popular ways would be also language use diaries. These are actually daily logs where parents write down amount of time child interacted with given language. And based on that, we can calculate estimated frequency of the use of given language. And psycholinguistic tools, which one of them I mentioned before. So let's take a look at the study itself. So the study itself concerned language dominance and gesture use in bilingual preschoolers. This was a pilot study. We had 2 sessions. All of the participants were visited at their homes. First, we started from the interview with parents. We were doing daily logs, observation. Based on the transcriptions, we were able to do proficiency and vocabulary tests. And then after the second session, during the second session, we would conduct the study. First session was not only for the interview with the parents, but also for the children to be familiar with the researcher and to feel comfortable around the researcher. So each study consisted of 4 stages. We had a test conversation, which was essentially a warm-up that took around 10 to 15 minutes. And this warm-up was for us to be sure that child will actually speak in the language that the round is conducted in. Then we had a game. In the corner, right corner, you can see 2 puppets. Children would interact with puppets. Those puppets would have 3 daily use objects specific for the dominant and non-dominant language, and would suggest different, quite unconventional use for each of the object. And children were meant to explain how to use objects presented by puppets. Then we would have another test conversation and then another round of game. The order of languages was randomized each round. And what we observe is that the frequency of gestures produced by each participant was higher when they were speaking in the dominant language. Apart from that, we had a participant which was described as balanced bilingual, and we didn't observe significant difference in the number of gestures produced. What was quite interesting for us is that the participants would use the gestures in a different manner when speaking the dominant language compared to the non-dominant language. So when speaking dominant language, participants would mainly use gestures as a support of meaning making. So they would produce a gesture which essentially had the same meaning as the words that they were saying. However, when speaking the non-dominant language, they would substitute. So instead of saying the word, they would gesture the word. In case of balanced bilinguals, once again, we didn't observe such difference. Now we'll take a look at some examples. There are 3 of them. The first example of the participant, she speaks here her non-dominant language, which is Polish, and she lists piercings, and she asked if it hurt. So instead of saying, oh, you have it in your ear, in your nose, and back in your ear, she will say here, 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 tu. So she substitutes the words that she would say in her dominant language with gesture. However, as you can see in example number 2, the same participant, when she speaks her dominant language, she repeats the meaning of the words with the gesture. So as she was asked what would happen to you if you washed your face with soap, so she specifically describes that you cannot do it near your nose, as the bubbles go into your nose, and as she gestures, she repeats the meaning with the gesture. Similar thing happens with the second participant, as also she, with her, in her dominant language English, when specifying how to use toothbrush, she will point to her teeth. See this white thing? It's my in my mouth. That's my teeth. So she wants again repeats the meaning with gesture, and is quite descriptive and specific. So now we will move to the ongoing studies. There are two of them. First one focuses mostly on adapters, the issues concerning adapters, and classifying adapters. Second one is concerned with the interaction of participants and gestures produced during the sort of interaction when they are meant to produce description of an object. And for half of the group, the object is present, put in front of them, and for the other half, the object is displayed on the screen. So we'll first take a look at the procedure, then at the participants, then at the materials and setup for the study, and then we will move to adapters and issues concerning adapters. So, starting with experimental procedure, we did some measurements. First one, which would be heart rate measurement, and then we also did the emotionality, activity, sociability, temperament survey. And the survey, the questionnaire that you've seen before, which is language experience and proficiency questionnaire. To establish the base heart rate, the baseline, we would do physiological sigh exercises as the participants were seated, and then we would start the descriptive task in first language. The task duration for every participant was from 3.5 to 4 minutes. Then we would use NASA TLX questionnaire to assess cognitive workload. And then after participants filled down the questionnaire concerning cognitive workload, we would have to reset physiological states, meaning we would do physiological sigh exercise once again. So we would do some breathing exercises. And after that, what followed is the descriptive task in second language with the same duration, and the final cognitive workload assessment for the second round. So similarly to children, the study with children, for each participant here, the order of languages was randomized. We had 20 participants, predominantly females, with 12 females and 8 males, from 20 to 36 years old. Most of the participants, 19 of them, were classified as late bilinguals. Only one of the participants was early bilingual, and also as early bilingual, he was simultaneous bilingual. And in terms of language dominance, majority of participants, 17 of them, are dominant in Polish, so the subordinate language would be English, and 3 of them dominant in English, so the subordinate language then it's Polish. So let's take a look at the setup. We have set up for the object condition and for the screen condition. Participants were told to not move from the seat, so they couldn't stand up from the seat to see the sculpture better, and in both cases, the screen and the object itself was in distance of 70 centimeters from the participant. The object sculptures presented to participants were quite abstract and specific for the language. So first of all, we have dragon dog-like sculpture for English, and female snake-like object for Polish. Both of the figures are made by local artists from Toruń, and in terms that were the object presented in the object condition. When it comes to condition where the participants were seated in front of the screen, the sculptures were presented from 4 different perspectives. So we have top, front, left, and right. And we don't have back perspective, as this perspective wasn't visible for the participants with the objects seated in front of them. Similarly, with the condition, with the Polish language, we have sculpture presented from the top, front, right, and left. Let's move to the expected outcomes and hypotheses. In terms of gesture, we hypothesize that participants will use more gestures when describing non-present objects compared to when physical objects are present, and also that the presence of physical object will result in the production of different types of gestures compared to when describing non-present objects. Apart of that, we measure cognitive load by heart rate, and we hypothesize that it will increase when participants discuss non-present objects compared to when physical objects are present, and that gesturing, what was actually proven before, can help in conserving cognitive resources when discussing, in that case, non-present objects, thus reducing cognitive load. So we also, I also would like to present hypotheses and expected outcomes concerning adapters. First one would be that adapters are produced more frequently under high cognitive load during descriptive tasks, and that there would be a significant relationship between the type of adapter produced and the level of cognitive load experienced by individual. Apart from that, adapters function as markers of cognitive processes, and that they're integrated into gesturing process. However, for that, we would need a new model for annotation of adapters, as the most popular model for now would be the one introduced by Ekman and Frazen in late 60s, which would present classification of adapters as self-adapters and object adapters. So essentially, we look at if the participant interacts with himself, touching himself on the object, so playing with bracelet, watch, ring, or shirt. So the production of adapters is influenced by internal states, such as arousal or anxiety, and that was explored quite often in late 60s and 70s by researchers from field of psychology and psychiatry that would assign this specific role of adapters as a movement that marks anxiety or arousal. However, as pointed out by Alan Cheney, adapters have not been fully explored in previous researches, and when discussing nonverbal communication, they are often omitted. So that presents us with rich gestures classification, exploring lots of factors influencing gestures, lots of types. However, with adapters, we don't have that much of a choice. And the question is actually why. First of all, I think it's because it's quite hard to annotate adapters. And I would like to show you one of the videos of the participants from the study. And as you can see, it's only 3.5 minutes. Lots of movements are happening, both in terms of the hands and legs too. And it's all time-consuming to annotate, but it's quite hard to distinguish which movements would be traditionally annotated as adapters and which of them could be gestures. And the issue is even more prominent when it comes to children. This is a 6-minute video, speed up, or of the child from previous study, and as you can see, lots of movement happening around, lots of interaction, both with objects and with me, but it's even harder with children when we look at natural interaction, interaction in natural environment and not in the lab environment. And over the years, we could observe different names for adapters. And as you look at those names, like auto-grooming, self-soothing, self-stimulation, displacement, self-touches, or concentration aids, some of those movements actually point to the role of the adapters in cognitive processes. So what I propose is a new classification for annotating adapters, that was tested on the data from the study that I just presented to you, and I annotated all of the movements that go into the traditional definition of adapters, and then each of the movements was described in terms of their structural characteristics. So if the movements are in sequence or if the movement is repetitive, but also I took into consideration what happens before the movement, during the movement, and after the movement. So based on that, we would have 4 subtypes of adapters. So adapters produced to readjust after a change of body position, fulfill body needs, support cognitive processes, and that would be the subtype. The final subtype would be borrowed from the classification by Dr. Lopez. So flutters, micro gestures, gestures to be, and for each subtype, as I discussed it, I will provide you with examples. I will play them several times as I'm talking, and yeah, let's see. So first of all, we have adapters produced to readjust after change of body position, and those adapters occur after the gesture production is finished, or after the whole position of body changes, and participants would readjust themselves to feel more comfortable. Those, if we apply the classification of gesture unit as simple and complex, those movements would be short and simple in their nature. And then we would have a class of adapters produced to fulfill body needs. So brushing your hair away, scratching, those movements are also short. They are repetitive, disruptive, and they fulfill the body need of the participant, also to make them feel more comfortable. However, as you can see in the first example of the participants scratching their face, it's quite hard to say if they are scratching because it's itchy, or if they are scratching because they are thinking. So how we distinguish adapters produced to fulfill body needs from adapters produced to support cognitive processes would be to look purely at all of the adapters produced by participant. So the whole video would be analyzed first in terms of disfluency, pauses, use of repetition, or use of words suggesting cognitive load or cognitive processes. So if participant would say, let me think, or it's so hard, I don't know how to describe that. Movements are repetitive. They are sequential. As you can see, this would be a sequence of movements as the participant continues to produce the same adapter in different placements. And they are much longer compared to the adapters that are produced to fulfill body need, and they would occur often during the round as they are highly individual. And so this sort of movement was described before by Barakat, and he described them as autistic and individual movements, so that they would be quite specific for the individual. So with assessing and annotating adapters produced to support cognitive processes, there would be a bit more trouble, as we have to take into consideration the whole video, and after that only we could annotate them based on the observation of the behavior of the individual. And the last type of adapters would be flutters, and they act as micro gestures. So they're kind of a gesture, but also not. In that case, those are restrained gestures that are not produced fully. In the case that I was able to annotate them, they would probably, as a full gesture, they would act as a index gesture or open palm hand gesture. And those movements are when I was annotating it, they would be defined as simple in terms of units if we apply the same unit classification of gestures to adapters. So what I also observe during the analysis is the legs movement, and that would be the next step in annotation. And I will show you another video. So please focus on what happens with hands, and when the hands stop, what happens with legs. So during stroke holds, when producing gesture, we would observe that some of the participants will start moving their legs. And after they move their legs, the legs act as adapters, producing adapters. And those are specifically two types of adapters. First of all, cognitive adapters. So we have specific movement during the disfluency as the hands are restricted and the participant is moving the legs. And the other type would be the flutter, as the participant would use the leg movement to emphasize certain parts, like as a beat gesture, or to use it as an index gesture to point to something. So that is quite interesting. However, it's not fully analyzed yet. So that's just a fun fact that happened that I wanted to show you. And that would actually be all. I'm really happy that you came here to listen, and thank you for your time. I will be happy to hear any suggestions or any comments. Yeah, so I think I give what's back to Rania.
So thank you very much, Klaudia, for a really interesting talk with lots of lots of work obviously has gone into this.